How do we save kids from the mental illness caused by their access and use of social media? Let's talk about it. I'm Marco Arroyo. Welcome back to In Between Sundays. I'm happy you're here today. Before we get into the video, if you would like the video, subscribe to the channel and leave a comment. Also consider supporting on Patreon. I very much so would appreciate it. Today we're going to be talking about Joe Rogan and his conversation with Jonathan Haidt. Now, I just did a video recently where Joe Rogan was talking to Abigail Schreier about the difference between liberal parents and more conservative parents and the mental health outcomes in kids, and how the mental health problems in parents are affecting their children, and so on and so forth. Check that video out. Very well worth the time and the watch. However, now Joe Rogan just did a podcast with Jonathan Haidt, who wrote the book, The Coddling of the American Mind. Well, now he's coming out with another book. So he's doing this press tour, and he's on the Joe Rogan podcast, and he is suggesting that we can solve the mental illness problems, or at least very much so bring them down in kids, the mental illness problems in kids that are being caused by social media, by doing 4 things. And we're going to talk about each and every one of those 4 things. But Joe Rogan is very skeptical. Notice how skeptical he is about all of this.
It's like a good suggestion. I just don't imagine that with the momentum that social media has today and the ubiquitous use, that kids are going to give it up. They're not going to want to give it up. I think there's a lot of kids that have had problems that if you talk to them alone and you say, wouldn't it be better if social media didn't exist, if they've been bullied or what have you, they'd say yes.
Yeah.
But the idea of getting a massive group of people to adopt this is highly unlikely.
Well, you may be right, but I'm encouraged because whenever I speak to Gen Z audiences, and I've spoken middle schools, high schools, college audiences, I always ask, do you think I got this wrong, or do you think this is a correct description of what's happening? They agree. They're not in denial. They see the phones are messing them up. They see that social media is messing up the girls especially. So, even in middle school, certainly high school, the kids actually agree that this is a problem. And
now, for context, again, I'm 6 minutes into the video. There is this mutually assured destruction that is happening, and this is what they were just talking about in the context, that part of the problem with social media is that so many of the people have it, not because it makes them happy, but because everyone else has it, and they realize that it makes them less happy in their lives. But they have it because, well, everyone else has it, and everyone else has it, so therefore I have to have it. And that's what Joe Rogan's saying, why he's so skeptical. I just don't think everyone is going to give it up.
And so if it was offered to them, let's do the other 3 norms. Let's get them all on the table.
Yeah,
and then
please.
All right, so the first is no smartphone before high school. Second is no social media till 16.
So no smartphone before high school is his first rule. Second one, no social media before 16.
That one's going to be a little harder to do. But the big platforms like Instagram, the place where you're posting and the whole world is seeing and strangers are contacting you, I think the age is currently 13 and it's not enforced. I think that needs to go up to 16. Here, it would be nice if Congress would raise the age to 16 and make the companies enforce it. But even if they don't, parents, as long as many other parents are doing it, I as a parent, my kids are 14 and 17. As long as many other parents are saying 16 is the age, then it's very easy for me to say that also. That's the second norm.
Yeah.
Okay, so again, the first one is no smartphone before high school, and he was saying if they need a phone for safety or whatever, and that's what every kid says, what if I'm going to die or whatever. And again, I'm a parent. I'm very sympathetic to that. He says give them a flip phone. They still sell them. Did you guys know that? They still sell them. But he says no social media before 16. Again, it would drastically bring down a lot of the mental health outcomes. And again, a lot of kids, their brains aren't they're just not ready to have access to the opinions of the whole world. Most people that are watching this video probably did not grow up with access to the opinions of the whole world, especially the opinions on them. Kids just aren't ready. They don't know how to handle that stuff.
If you could get them to say it. And I think the kids would push back so hard because so many other kids are on it, and that's how they interact with each other.
Right, but Joe, you're just reiterating the collective action problem. You're just saying they react because all the other kids are on it.
Yes.
So it does require a big push. But I think we're ready. I don't think we were ready in 2019. It wasn't as clear. But now that we're through COVID, now that the numbers are through the roof, I think we're ready. And if it starts in some places and not others, that's okay with me. That's the way it's going to be. And then we'll see whether it spreads.
And then we'll see the data.
Yeah, well, because look at smoking. Smoking is highly addictive. It was very common up through the 1990s. And now it's very rare in high school. Very few high school kids smoke. So it's possible.
That's a good point. People say there's no way. I just can't imagine a world where the kids aren't all into smartphones and social media. Again, everyone used to smoke. That's something I hear here at church a lot of the time. To go back in the day, all the men in church basically used to, between services or whatever, go out into the parking lot and smoke. All of them. Now, if someone's smoking in the parking lot, it's kind of a weird thing to see.
To change norms.
And what was the third?
The third is phone-free schools. And this one is happening. This is already happening. So I published articles in The Atlantic and
phone-free schools.
Substack, afterbabble.com, bringing together the research. When kids have a phone in their pocket in school, they're going to be texting. Because if anyone is texting, during the day, during the school day, they all have to check because they don't want to be out of the loop. They don't want to be the one who doesn't know. So when kids started bringing smartphones into school instead of flip phones, academic achievement actually went down. Kids are stupider today than they were 15 years ago. I mean, stupider meaning measuring their academic progress. After 50 years of improvement, it turns around after 2012. And this is true in the US and internationally. So there's just no reason why kids should have the phone on them. They should come in the morning, put it in a phone locker or a Yonder pouch, go about their day. And guess what? The schools that have tried it, after a week or two, everyone loves it. The kids are like, oh, wow, we actually talk in between classes. We have 5 minutes in the hallway. We actually talk. And you hear laughter. Whereas right now in a lot of schools, it's just zombies looking at their phones in between as they're walking from class to class.
Yeah.
Now, I've seen this myself, too, on a church level. You go to a church camp where phones aren't allowed like 90% of the day. On day one, always going to get a bunch of grief. Always going to get a bunch of grief for it. But by like day 2, 3, everyone is so happy. And they're happier than normal. Because they're in society, they're socializing with people that are their friends, people that they love, whoever it might be, and they're not being bogged down. A lot of them say, "I love that I don't even know what's going on in the world right now. I love that I haven't seen social media. I love that I'm not on Instagram." I definitely have seen this to be the case.
So the assumption is that from 2012, kids are just much more distracted.
Oh my God! I mean, look, Joe. I think I heard you say in one of, it was a conversation you had a few weeks ago with a comedian friend of yours. And I think this was a direct quote from you. My phone runs my life. Does that sound like you?
Yeah, it sounds like me.
Okay. So, as adults, we have a fully formed prefrontal cortex. You and I had a normal childhood. Our brains developed. We have the ability to stay on task. And man, it is hard. With notifications coming in, there's always so many interesting things you could do instead of what you need to do. So it's hard enough for us as adults. Imagine if you didn't have a normal childhood where you developed executive function, where you developed that ability as a teenager. Because puberty is when the prefrontal cortex, the front part of the brain, that's when it rewires into the adult configuration. So the fact that we're scrambling kids' attention at the time when they're supposed to be learning how to pay attention, I think is terrible.
Every adult needs to think about that. How hard is it for you to focus? Even just watching this video, how hard is it for you to focus while you're doing your job, which is probably, it's probably more entertaining than this video. But how hard is it for you to focus in things in life because of your phone, because of social media? Adults I know that have social media say, man, this is difficult. It's a struggle. Yeah, I can see the addiction in it in me. I know a lot of adults that will say that. Remember back in the day when you used to just wait? Do you remember that? I remember that. Again, I didn't grow up with a phone. I got that a little bit later on in my life. Do you remember just waiting? It's crazy how kids never have to wait anymore. They can do something that will distract them while they're waiting. Again, we think that that's just doing nothing to our kids. Do we think that's having no negative outcome or negative reaction in their minds at all? It's a mistake that we're making.
Where do you think this is going? This is my concern, is that this is just the beginning of this integration that we have with devices.
Yeah.
And that the social media model, and it's been immensely profitable.
Yes.
And
Oh my God, yes.
incredibly addictive.
Yep.
And there's a massive amount of capital that's invested in keeping us locked into these things. Where do you think this goes from here? Have you paid attention to the technology, like
AI?
Yeah.
Yes. So let me just draw a very, very sharp, bright line between adults and children. I'm very reluctant to tell adults what to do. If adults want to spend their time on an addictive substance or device or gambling, I'm reluctant to tell them that they can't. So when we're talking about adults, I think where this is going is, well, where it's gone so far is everything that you might want becomes available instantly and for free with no effort. And so in some ways that's a life of convenience, but in other ways it's messing us up and it's making us weaker. So, you want sexual satisfaction? Okay, here you go, free porn. And it gets better and better and more intense. You want a girlfriend or boyfriend who you can customize? You have that already. Advances in robotics are such that it's just a matter of time before AI girlfriends are put into these incredible female bodies that you can customize. So I think the adult world, for young adults especially, is going to get really, really messed up. And again, I'm not saying we need to ban it now, but what I'm saying is, for God's sakes, don't let this be 11-year-old children's lives. Let's at least keep children separate from all this craziness until their brains develop, and then they can jump into the whirlpool and the tornado. But the fact that our 11-year-old girls are now shopping at Sephora for anti-wrinkle cream or all sorts of expensive skin treatments, this is complete insanity.
Yeah.
So let's at least protect the kids until they're through puberty.
So rule number 4 isn't in the video, but I found a clip of him talking about it here at this conference.
That's rule 3, phone-free schools. And rule 4 is far more free play
and for unsupervised play and childhood independence. Both of our countries freaked out in the 90s, locked up our kids because of we lost trust in each other. We thought everyone's a child molester or rapist. There's a great book, Paranoid Parenting, by Frank Furedi, British sociologist. So that's it. If we do those 4 things, and even if half of us do them, we solve the collective action problems.
Wow. So rule number 4 actually ties in a lot to what Abigail Schreier was saying, that there are a lot of kids who are being watched so much by their parents and they have no room to be independent. And so there's this problem that happens where kids are just taught never to grow up, never to learn how to do life on their own. They're never independent in any way at all. Now, I get it. We want to keep kids safe and things like that. However, we do have to give them ways to be independent. Everyone who is well-adjusted in this life, the vast majority of them had some way to be independent. Those that did not really do struggle when they go into life. That's just the reality of what all these statistics bear out, that people like Jonathan Haidt or Abigail Schreier are always talking about, Jordan Peterson, among many others. So the 4 rules again: no smartphone before high school, no social media before the age of 16, phone free when you're at your school, phone free schools, and then more unsupervised play or independence, more free kind of play and things like that. Again, all these well-adjusted people that I know from past generations, that is what they got to do. That is what they got to do. They had some way to be independent. They had some way to be free and to learn how to solve problems and to go through life on their own in a safe childhood kind of a way to do that. We really ought to consider all of this stuff. So extremely important. The social media mental illness problem is such a major issue. And in order for us to really be the people who we ought to be to protect our kids and give them the best chance they have at living a good life, we've got to protect them from these evils. I get it. And myself as a Christian, I get it. I use a lot of technology, but I got to understand the boundaries that this has. And I also have to understand that some people are too young to be able to handle this the right way. It's just the reality. If people my age can't handle it the right way, imagine how we're giving that power to people with even less developed brains. It's something we very seriously ought to think about. But let me know what you think. Is this something that is a major problem, social media a big problem, or are we just going to adjust to this as humans? I don't think so at all. But if you have a thought on this, let me know. Leave a comment below, like the video, subscribe to the channel, and consider supporting on Patreon. God bless you. I'll talk to you soon. Goodbye.